building your marriage on a solid ground. Here's our blueprint for success.
Let's talk about love and marriage the way that God intended. A life experience, here we share it. The No Fruit Podcast. Tune in from any platform. No Fruit Podcast. Will help your spirit transform.
Hey y'all, how are y'all doing today? So, Kafa.
Yes.
So, we want to talk about building a blueprint for marriage. Building your marriage for a place for success. And right now we're in the month of May, and just in a few short months we'll be celebrating our 25th wedding anniversary. And so May was when things started to really change because we got married in September of 2000. And May was one of those months where we really started thinking about getting married and putting things into place. And one of the conversations or one of the things that we started, I don't think it was in May, but things that we had to put into place, which is going through marriage counseling.
Right.
And so in that marriage counseling, we started talking about roles and responsibilities, right? And we had the idea that I had the idea. I don't recall how much you said, but not 100%. But I know I had this idea of 50-50.
Wow.
And unfortunately, it was a fair assessment or a fair thought at the time, but I don't believe that it was given its fair, where I say this is the unfortunate part, its fair share of being a true conversation, of setting real life expectations, because I know for myself, I did not have that role model marriage in front of me to have that real conversation. So unfortunately, my expectations of our roles might have been a little skewed based off of TV. For me. So and as Kafa and I have spoken about it over the years, more especially within the last year, the idea of husband and wife roles, male, female roles, father, mother roles, were a little skewed one way or another. And we weren't always on the same page with that. So for me, the expectations were not from a thoroughly thought out process or informed process. So I think 50-50, quote unquote, was not the right way to go.
I think for me, the way that the question and the homework assignments were presented to us during marriage counseling, I think that's perhaps why we came up with that answer. I don't think for myself that I answered it pertaining to television, because I didn't really see 50-50 in television that I can recall.
You don't think Cosby Show was 50-50-ish?
In what way?
I mean, I say that because you can't always say that one person was the lead in everything from a television perspective.
Right. I mean, but again, when we went through counseling, he was just asking in reference to who's taking out the trash and who's going to make the repairs and who's going to cook the meals and who's going to do all the things that, are normal day-to-day operations, as well as, hey, if something breaks, who's going to fix it?
Right.
So I didn't always see all of that in television. Like, I don't know who changed the toilet paper roll. on any TV show. But that's somebody's that's somebody's duty. Like, like who's going to change the toilet paper roll? So for me, entering into marriage counseling, like that's a 50-50. Like if you get to the bottom of the roll and you're the last person, can you please restock the toilet paper? Like, don't be like, oh, Kafa always puts the toilet paper on.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, oh well, it's just not in there. Who does the marketing? Okay, well, again, it can be one or both. At that particular time, we didn't know each other's marketing styles, if you would. So that was something that had to be learned. When it came to who's going to fix the, something and nail it into the wall, I was open to doing that. I didn't have a problem with it. It wasn't like, oh, no, not me. That leave that up to the man. So for me, that was a 50-50. Like, I don't mind fixing something.
Right.
And as I've asked before, like I've asked for power drills and power tools for, Mother's Day, birthdays, things like that.
Right.
So I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem cutting the grass. I don't have I didn't have those
defined quote unquote roles.
Like, and it wasn't even like a gender specific role. I just didn't have a problem rolling up my sleeves, doing any of those things. If those things needed to get done, then I'll do it. Now, do I always like it? No. But it wasn't like, oh, I'm always going to be the one changing the kids, that type of thing. And I don't remember that we talked that much about
we didn't
children and who's going to do what in marriage counseling.
Right.
And again, back to television, I don't recall those roles being that specific in my television watching. Like, hey, only the mothers did this and only the fathers did that. Now, again, in some of the older shows, yeah, the moms didn't work and they had certain roles. But again, you didn't see it all the time. And not to my understanding was it like, oh, no, like he doesn't associate with the children at all.
Right.
So, and I didn't see very many. I mean, there were certain TV shows where it was geared to fixing things up. And it may have been that, but I didn't really have like truly gender specific roles. So to say 50-50, to say those exact things, I wasn't necessarily like yourself. I wasn't on board with, but I would say, hey, everybody see a need, fill a need type of a thing. Like if that's needed, then do it. Like not necessarily, hey, not going to do that because that's not what I do. Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of difficult to say what for newlyweds or for people who are getting married to say, hey, list your expectations, because I think they're going to change. I think your responsibilities are going to change because of life. Life changes you in some way.
But I would say that not a but in the sense of what you're talking about, what you think initially, because of age, because of circumstances, right? Even availability are all factors that we don't consider. So when we first got married, we're both working where, right? I'm in the hospital. I'm working in a hospital setting that is not in the city, but you are, or a central city, downtown, where you were working downtown, right?
Yes.
And so I'm driving to work every day where you're catching public transportation.
Yeah.
And so in those two perspectives, you don't realize that, our expectations, one on just transportation is not the same. Our responsibilities in that is not necessarily the same. And so I have to gas the car up once a week. You're getting a trans pass or tokens or whatever once a week, whatever it might be, right? So whereas also in addition to that, in order for me to get lunch, I drove out somewhere. You got lunch, you might have went down to the corner, real close. So sometimes, and I'm using something like that because that also changed how we spend our money, right? That changed the mentality, in going into work that day. So for an example for yourself, even you do it till right now, where when you go into work, you're taking in a can of soup or something simple like that, right? Where, I still want a hoagie, or whatever it is. So even from a financial perspective, right, dictated what our expectations were, and what we wanted for ourselves and how that trickled down to our partner, so, so you might say, hey, Maurice, as you stated about going to the market. So when we go to the market, you're getting the soup, right? I'm like, well, why are you going to the market? Like, I don't need to go to the market. What kind of soup do you want? You get what I mean? So even if I had gone, again, expectations were different. We might not have paid attention to what the other person was doing, not doing, why they were doing it, whatever it is. And I think something as small as that of where we're working, how we're spending our money, even what we're eating, dictated what the expectation might have been for the other person. Because you would expect I'm saving money, you save money. I'm eating out, you eat out. Like, you get what I mean? Like, just sometimes those things like that can make a difference as well.
Right. I mean, so most definitely some of the tips would be to talk about your expectations, your roles and your responsibilities. Like Maurice and I said, hey, in counseling it was 50-50, but even moving forward, you have to have open and honest communication, talking about where things are and where you want things to go. So I think that's another way of building a solid foundation, is what I'm hearing you say. It's like, hey, you got to talk about, well, why are you doing this? And
I'm also saying not just why, but even if I don't ask you the question, can I at least pay attention?
Right.
You get what I mean? Like that's what I'm saying about the market part. If for those of you who may not have been reading too deep into it, if we're going to the market and we see that the soup is on sale, $5 for $1. Let's say $5 for $1, right?
What kind of soup is that?
I know, right? But let's just say $5 for $1, right? And so, but if Kafa's getting 5 soups for $1, and then, so she does that Saturday, and I may or may not pay attention to how you're traveling on Monday morning to work. So whether you're taking 1 can or all 5 cans with you, a soup, again, I'm using this as an example. How are you traveling and using that when you get to work? And then when I talk to you for lunch, when you say, well, I had soup and crackers, right?
Yes.
So am I really paying attention? Am I really hearing what you're saying that you had? And then take it a step further, your lunch cost you $1.13. Versus, again, me, who would have gone to Wendy's and just spent $14. So, but your lunch, and I'm sorry, your lunch didn't even cost $1.13. The reason being because you got 5 for $1, right?
Right.
So your lunch probably cost you 33 cents.
Yes.
And give or take what you decide to drink.
Water.
That's what I'm saying, right? So give or take. Let's give you the benefit of the doubt. Let's go buck wild and call it 50 cents, right? Let's just say that your lunch was 50 cents. Again, I overspent how many times?
But again, that's just the foundation. Like that's, like you said, paying attention and listening. And is that what we're doing? Like, or do you feel like, well, coffee, you need to treat yourself. You're worth more than that. Like, why are you only spending 50 cents on your lunch? Ain't you still hungry?
Otherwise a salad. Yes. Yes.
But
I
a
think
salad
that
costs $14.
it does.
So for some lettuce,
but
no.
again, as my role as the husband
Mm-hmm.
or my role as the attendant is to make sure, or my in my roles of responsibility of understanding, like, I need to understand you. My responsibility is you. So I need to be more responsible and responsive of how you move and how you maneuver and what's going on. And so I need to pay attention a little bit more. So if you don't know that from the beginning, if no one told you that, to really hone in on what your spouse, potential spouse, your attendant, whatever, however word you want to use, right? If you're not really aware of that, aware of your surroundings, reading the room, whatever term you want to use, how are you supposed to understand your true role and or responsibility in the relationship? Because as the role of the other half, I have a fiscal responsibility, right? You know, because someone that might be listening, like, well, Maurice, what are you talking about? Like, where's the responsibility part? I'm responsible for the financial part. Like, what is my role? If she spent 50 cents and I'm spending $15 on my end, just saying it out loud, I'm kicking myself right now of, was I fiscally responsible prior to getting married, let alone the very beginning of our marriage, to where, as y'all heard, we've talked about some of our financial challenges that we've had over the years.
Right.
You know, so...
And like you said, to go even deeper, you know, and not a lot of people are going to do this in the beginning of their marriage, but why is it, or why was it that the spouse was only spending 50 cents on lunch? Why is it, or why was it that the spouse was spending $15 on lunch, $14, or whatever you were saying? You know, why is that happening? And then why was it happening not once, or, you know, but repetitively? So what was going on? What was the background for that?
And I think something like that, and I only can speak for where I am today, right? I could, confident in all honesty, I couldn't tell you, right?
I mean, for me, breakfast and lunch, you know, I guess it's kind of like growing up when you're in grade school. Like, you wasn't having no really lavish lunch at school. You know what I mean? So for me, when we met, I still was like, I just need to eat something. Like, it doesn't have to be like, oh, wow, that was the best sandwich
Well, I didn't eat breakfast, though.
Okay, right? I'm just saying, I said breakfast or lunch. You know what I mean? Right. So, again, not everybody that was your breakfast. Right. You know, at 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Right. That's when you broke your fast. You know, now, again, did you have, you know, a donut or something before then? Or, again, did you break your fast with your lunch? So maybe, you know, you're balancing out and say, hey, it was a $14 thing, so that would have been my $7 for breakfast and $7 for lunch because I'm going all out. But just understanding that. So for me, I just wanted to fuel my body so I can keep going. I wasn't trying to, and again, I'm a female, and men probably, you know, have a different appetite, different metabolism or whatever. I wasn't trying to eat and then be sleepy for the rest of the hours.
That's why I always ate late, if you notice.
So, you know, and to me, I want to be able to enjoy it, not eat it and then have indigestion because I got to go back to work and deal with whatever work has to bring. You know, I'll sit back and enjoy the food the way I want it prepared when I get home, you know, type of a thing. So, because that just seems always, it happens to me, like, hey, you think you want something and then you get it and you're like,
that's not it.
Why they put that on there? That just messed the whole thing up. You know what I mean? And then, or whatever, or it was really good and you're like, oh, wow. And you just want to sit back and then truly enjoy it and you can't or whatever. So for me, lunch while at work was just, and still is, hey, just put something on your stomach so you can say to the nutritionist or to your doctor that, hey, I do eat throughout the day, to fuel your body because you're, moving and shaking and whatever. And it does need something. So, but have I gone days where I didn't eat anything at lunch? Have it been soup or something else light? Yes. If you consider that light. Because sometimes I have soup and I'm like stuffed. So,
but see, again, as you're asking the question about responsibility, right? Understanding, being observant,
right?
Being in the presence, right? So again, is it my responsibility to ask you why you eat like a bird? It is. So then that way I understand moving forward what you would prefer, especially for those of us who are, rather health conscious, because at that time I wasn't necessarily health conscious, right? And not understanding that was contributing to my illnesses, right, that I was having at those times. So, but now looking hindsight, I was like, maybe I should not have eaten at Wendy's as often as I did.
Shout out to Wendy's.
Yeah, we need a sponsorship or something. I know, but the reality is that we have to be more aware. We have a responsibility to be more aware of where we are and what's going on in that particular role, in that particular moment. Because even though we have the title of boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, whatever the situation is, but in that particular moment, is my role your what'd you call it? Nutritionist? Is my role your best friend? Is my role, because sometimes it will change depending on the situation.
And that's what I had said earlier, when it comes to just understanding the roles and responsibilities of a spouse, it's going to change.
Yeah, and I understand that. I'm just making sure that people understand that even though you have this title, under the title, you do have at moments, right, because it can change, second to second, because then you could be the therapist, and the next thing you know, like, why are you laying on the couch? Should I be getting paid for this? Type thing,
right?
Mentality, so so I just want y'all to think about that for a second. For those of you who have yet to jump the broom and thinking about it, please understand what it means to really setting yourself up for success, having some of these conversations. But more importantly, in my opinion, I think what's most important is paying attention. The expectation is for you to pay attention. So what role should you use? What responsibility is all going to change in a moment?
Yes.
To me, the success, the blueprint, or the groundwork is paying attention. What about you?
I would say once you pay attention, you have to communicate to make sure that what you paid attention to is something you should be paying attention to.
Right.
And you're not being fixated on something that you shouldn't be.
Right.
And then understanding the person a little bit more. Because once you say, like, hey, I've noticed this and I've paid attention to these things, tell me a little bit more about it or whatnot. It can be something like, hey, oh, yeah, I've always done that because of this. And it could be, a sore point, and you might be able to work through something together. Or like, hey, we really want to take a trip, so I'm going to cut back and not spend $14.
Right.
I'm only going to spend 50 cents because, hey, that $13 can go every day times $40, 40 days or whatever can pay for a trip or can pay off some of this stuff that we owe, so that the creditors can stop calling or whatever. So, but we didn't just having the conversation and then having that goal in mind, because then we can work together on it. I think that also helps to build a foundation.
And I think also to build upon what you're saying about communication is understanding that even though I see what it is, or I'm trying to understand what it is, and we talk about it, I think in true communication, I get to understand 100% your position of that. Because a lot of times we could look at it, I can say, hey, this is what I see, but in true communication, I need to hear you on the other side of that as well. Mm-hmm. Because most of it is listening more than speaking, right? So, hey, Kafa, why are you eating like a bird? If you explain to me, well, Maurice, this is what I would like to do, but, I would like to take a trip. So I spend 50 cents a day. All right, Kafa, so if I look at this a little deeper, because this is where my mind had gone. If I'm spending $13 a week on lunch, you spend 50 cents.
A week or a day?
I mean, a day. Okay. A day, right? Mm-hmm. But if I just took $3 of one of them $13, in all honesty, you ate almost a whole week. In all honesty, mm-hmm. right? 50 cents a day, right? Actually, no, I guess I did eat a whole week, plus the following week. Mm-hmm. So you saved, you've done whatever it is. So you save way more in a situation like that than I would have ever, the way I was spending. So yes, if you wanted to take the trip, you could. So instead of, taking a trip, 29 years later, 30 years later versus 5 years later is a big difference.
Right.
So I think your point is very well taken as I'm listening of communication, mm-hmm. because communication is a two-way street, and try to get to the meat and potatoes of the situation. But you're very welcome. I think that being attentive, listening ear, mindset, and being able to communicate, because that's part of the main part of communication is listening twice as much as you speak, and ensuring that individual is being heard and valued and all that stuff mm-hmm. within that conversation. So I think those are the things that helps out with building a blueprint for success and understanding our roles and responsibilities, each and every one of those things. Because it doesn't matter. It's going to come down to listening or let's put it like this, effective communication skills. So, but let us know what your thoughts are. If you are just about to jump the broom, if you've already jumped the broom, or you've jumped the broom and gave the broom back, you broke the broom, you burnt up the broom, whatever it is, let us know what the situation is and tell us what your thoughts are. So, thank y'all very much.
Thank you for listening.
Talk to y'all later.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the No Fruit Podcast, where we bring you fruitful conversations, ripened wisdom, and love that's deeply rooted. We hope today's discussion left you feeling uplifted, encouraged, and ready to take on life's journey with purpose. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone who could use a little inspiration in their day. You can catch up on past episodes, send us your thoughts, or learn more about us on social media. Until next time, stay rooted in love, and remember, every seed you plant today shapes the fruit of tomorrow. Take care, and we'll see you next time.